We are here for a blush off, y'all. Like a dance off, but we're talking about blushes because I said in a recent video that I feel like 2024 is year of the blushes, and every time I turn around, there is a new blush being released. So I have 5 blushes in front of me that are new to the market, and I want to talk to you about which one I think is right for you. So if that's what you're into, you are in the right place. Hello and welcome. My name is Kelly, and I love all things makeup and beauty. I love talking, I love makeup, I love talking about makeup. So if you like to chat about makeup too, you are in the right spot. But why don't we go ahead? I am going to show you some demos. I'm going to talk about these blushes, and I'm going to let you know which one is worth your money. Let's dive in. I recently picked up these products from NYX, the Buttermelt Bronzer, and then one of the Buttermelt blushes. I also picked up one of the new Kosas blushes. I have a new reformulated shade from Haus Labs. I did pick up a powder blush from Lawless. Lawless recently released some cream blushes. Creams are not my jam, so I picked up the powder blush. And then of course we have the one from Rare Beauty, this one right here, which is their powder blush as well. I'm gonna show you some demos. I'm gonna let you know a little bit about each product, and I will share my thoughts with you. I'm not going to start in any particular order, so I have this one right here from Haus Labs. I did film a video trying it out, sharing my thoughts, a viral makeup video. I will link that down below. You can find this at Sephora for $32. And in case I didn't mention, this is French Rosette or French Rosé. So these blushes are not new, but this shade itself is new. And I find that this shade gives me a little bit of like that sunburnt effect. So it's mentioned on the Sephora site, it is defined as a neutral rose. It says that this blush formula is supposed to be hydrating. It is a pressed powder formula, long wearing. It is a talc-free blush. It also is supposed to help reduce redness. It has hydrating squalene and hydroberry that melt into the skin. It does say here that with one swipe you have blendable color. And one thing I will say about this blush is, y'all, it is pigmented. Okay, very pigmented. My favorite brush to apply blush is from Sigma. It's the F40 Large Angled Contour Blush, and I have to tap in lightly because this blush here, although it is fluffy and it has a nice angle for my cheeks, it is a little bit more on the dense side, and it picks up product and applies it where you want it. I know there was a little bit of maybe upset or concern in the fact that when these Haus Lab blushes were released, because they were already out there. The powder blushes were already out there, but they were repackaged to have like the matching color on the front and everything like that. And they made this blush smaller. I did not try it out before, but now you have 5 grams or 0.18 ounces. I still feel like this blush is a really good size. Like I have no problem. You can see here next to my blush brush, I have no problem dipping my brush in there. Like I said, it is highly pigmented. I have no problem blending it out, but I do have to be careful not to go overboard with this one. There are 6 different shades. So you have Dragon Fruit, which is a cool pink tone shade, Hibiscus Haze, which is a mauve pink. You have a red one in Watermelon Bliss, Pomelo Peach is a soft coral, Fire Moon is a beige peach, and then of course you have this one here in French Rosette. I do enjoy this formula. Like I said, it's $32 and it's highly pigmented. On the back it says there is a shelf life of 24 months, although I mean, blushes I feel like last a while. So definitely if you are into a very pigmented blush, if you like your blush to really pop and stand out, this would be a good option for you. Just know that it is a little bit smaller. If you do have some of her other shades, it is a little bit smaller. You do also have a nice range in that kind of cooler toned pink shade and a bright red. I feel like a lot of brands, when they release a blush, they stick to like those neutrals, and you do have some fun pops with this one. Lawless recently released their Pinch My Cheeks Soft Blur Cream Blush. However, I am not a cream blush lover, but I've heard really, really good things about their powder blush. So this is the Make Me Blush. It's talc-free and it has a velvet formula. You can also find this one at Sephora. I picked up the shade Vintage Love because it's like this neutral mauve-y pink. It does say that there's a little bit of a plum undertone in there. This one is $29, so a little bit more affordable than the Haus Labs. And with this one, you do have, it looks like the same amount. It says 0.18 ounces, 5.5 grams. Again, this also is a talc-free formula like the Haus Labs. Some people do have a reaction to talc. I personally don't, but I know that there are people out there who have a reaction to talc. So it's good to know in case you are someone who is sensitive to that ingredient. This blush is said to have a natural finish, to be long wear, and it is a silky soft pressed powder formula that seamlessly blends into the skin to give you a healthy, natural flush. This one has some good ingredients with the shea butter, the squalene, sweet almond oil. I would say that this tends to be more of a velvet formula. So with the Haus Labs, that one is very matte. Like when you put it down, it's going to be more of like that matte finish. Whereas this Lawless Blush, I do find it to have a little bit more of like a satin sheen. It's the blush that I have on this side of my face here, although I do have a highlighter on top. This is one, if you are a dry skinned girly like myself and you're looking for one that's not a flat matte, but you don't want any shimmer or sparkle, I feel like this Lawless is a great option. The Haus Labs would be great for the oily skin gals who want like matte finish, like you need to control the oils, but I like more of a satin finish. I like a little bit of a sheen, but I don't want any glitter. I don't want any shimmer. I don't want any specks. And this one is a great formula for that. It's very blendable. This one is not quite as pigmented as the French Rosé Haus Labs, but it still packed quite the pigment. So go in lightly. It's gonna last you. It applied beautifully on the skin. It blended beautifully. I felt like it did a great job with my blush brush. I feel like with the Haus Labs, I do have to be a little bit more careful because I can be heavy-handed. And even though this Lawless Blush is very, very pigmented, I didn't have any issues where I felt like I was too heavy-handed. I was able to apply the blush and blend it out nicely. And I'm really into this Vintage Love shade. You do have a couple more options here in the Lawless Blush. It has 8 shades. Of course, this one is Vintage Love. You also have Phoenix, which is a warm burnished apricot shade. You have Indian Summer, which is a medium tawny rose. You do have a dusty rose pink with a hint of coral in Desert Rose. There is Angel Suede, which is a soft peach. In the picture, it looks like more of an orange, whereas the Haus Labs one was more of like a lighter peach. This one looks like it has more of an orange undertone. Sakura is a light pinky coral. Then you have Daisy Pink, which is a bright petal pink. It looks like it has a little bit of a cooler undertone. And then you have Juicy Watermelon, which is a soft, like watermelon berry type of shade. So again, just like the Haus Labs, you do have several options here. And while you are getting the same amount of product, this one is a little bit cheaper because the Haus Labs was $32. This one is $29. And if you want to see the size comparison here, they both have 5 grams, 0.18 ounces. One is just circular and the other is in a square. You have beautiful embossing on both of them. There has been a lot of talk about this new Rare Beauty blush. This is the Soft Pinch Luminous Powder Blush. A lot of people are saying that it's giving them the highlighter vibes, but calling it a blush formula. This one is $26, but I would like to say you do have, almost half the amount of blush as the other two mentioned. So this has 0.098 ounces or 2.8 grams, whereas the Lawless was 5.5 grams and 5 grams for the Haus Labs. So this, although it does have like a dome shape, a beautiful mirror, this does have almost like half the amount of product in it for the $26 price range. I also feel like you don't get a lot of different variations of shade. With both the Lawless and the Haus Labs, I felt like there was an orange, a coral, a bright pink. There was a mauve-y type of shade. With this one, this particular shade here is in Hope, which is a nude mauve. Cheer is Selena's custom shade, which is a light warm pink. Happy is a cool toned pink. Truth is a mauve maroon. Then you have Love, which is a terracotta, and Joy, which is a muted peach. But they all tend to be like similar variations. They are in kind of the same color family. They're a little bit lighter, and you do have this sheen. Now, I will say, there are no chunks of glitter. There are no specks of glitter. I don't find it to be quite as pigmented as the highlighter. A lot of people are saying, in their opinion, this is just a colored highlighter. I don't find that to be true, but you are definitely going to get a sheen on your cheeks. If you are a matte lover, stay away. The entire cheek is going to have a sheen. So if you are someone who struggles with acne or texture on your skin, it's probably going to be accentuated with this blush, and you probably want to stay away from that. It says that this is a pressed powder formula. It's supposed to be long wear. You do have a shimmer, finish, and a radiant finish. So it's a lightweight glowy blush with buildable, seamless, and silky color to keep you beaming all day long. I will say, I have tried several different brushes and I don't think that I have found my perfect brush for this formula. It is very highly pigmented, and like I said, if there are any areas on my skin that have a little bit of texture, it is going to pick up on that. Now, I will wear this without a highlighter. I typically blush and highlight every single day. I love a glowy look. Again, I have dry skin, like that is what I'm going for. But I've had a hard time finding the perfect brush because I find that when I go in with my normal Sigma F40, it gives me a nice look, but I almost feel like because of the rounded tip, it applies a little bit unevenly when I'm picking it up with the brush. However, the brush that I like to use when I have a highly pigmented formula is the BK104 because it is fluffier. And when I do press into it, I find that I get these little lines on my blush that really, it's an aesthetic issue. It's not actually doing anything to the product, but I get these little lines on the blush and I find that it applies more evenly and it gives me a nice shimmer and the works. But again, it bothers me. It shouldn't bother me, but it bothers me that it leaves these like textural lines in the blush here. It does say here that this has a 12-month shelf life. I forgot to mention the Lawless has an 18-month shelf life. Again, take into account that powders last a little bit longer than creams and things like that. I do really like this blush. Again, I feel like this is definitely for someone who has dry skin or is looking for shine and sparkle, or if you're someone who's looking for like a highlighting blush kind of combination, this would work well for you. But if you are someone who prefers matte, maybe you have oily skin, you have texture, you don't want the shine and the shimmer, definitely shy away from this one. Another new blush to the market is this one here from Kosas, and I almost did not get this one. This is the Blush is Life Baked Talc-Free, again, talc-free, dimensional and brightening blush. I ended up picking mine up in the shade Swoon, which was off of a recommendation of my friend Kaki Reviews Beauty. She was talking about all of these blushes, but the Swoon is a pinky brown mauve. These blushes are $29, so $3 more than the Rare Beauty, but you do get more product in here than the Rare Beauty. So keep in mind, the Haus Labs was 5, the Lawless was 5.5 grams, then you had the Rare Beauty, which was 2.8 grams, and then you have 4.5 grams here with Swoon. So you are getting some more product. You have a beautiful swirl here. When I look at it, I can see some shimmer. Now I'm wearing it on this cheek here, on this side of my face, and I don't see, other than the highlighter, I don't see any chunks of glitter, I don't see any specks of glitter, but looking at this blush, I can tell right off the bat it is not a flat matte. There are some sparkles and shine in there, and this is supposed to be a dimensional brightening blush, so it's supposed to give you more of that like hydrated, beautiful look. There's hyaluronic acid in here. It's supposed to give you a radiant finish. It says on the Sephora site, a clean, silky, smooth, talc-free powder blush baked with squalene and hyaluronic acid in dimensional color duos for a healthy flush of color. Since you do get this baked formula as well, my Swoon could end up looking a little bit different than Kaki's Swoon, than your Swoon. You have to keep in mind that you're mixing 2 different shades together to get your custom shade, and it can look a little bit different every time you apply your blush. It's not gonna be like significantly different, but when you are mixing it together, you're gonna see a slight variation here. We also do have 8 shades. We have some lighter shades. Bliss is a warm peachy pink. We have Hype, which is a warm poppy pink. Butterflies is a cool baby pink. Adrenaline is a hot fuchsia. Thrill is a vibrant blood orange. Dreamland is a rosy bronze. You have Swoon right here, which is the pinky brown mauve, and then you have Euphoria, which is a cool pinky mauve. I have just started trying this blush out, and I find that I really like to use my BK104 when I have these multi-dimensional brushes. I do like a little bit of kind of a lighter look, or I like to build it up, and this fluffy brush does a better job for me. That's the brush that I used today, and again, I find that this one is highly pigmented, so go in lightly. I like to kind of swirl it around on my cheeks, but I did get a lot of pigment. Like, this packs a punch, although this like Swoon shade is like my kind of shade. So I don't mind that I'm getting a little bit more pop, a little bit brighter of a color. I get some good pigment. And also, again, as a dry skin girl, I really like that this has a radiant finish. So let's talk affordable. Let's talk about NYX Cosmetics. I did pick up the bronzer and one of the blushes. We will start with the blush. I picked up the Buttermelt blush in the shade For the Butta, which is a soft mauve shade. And y'all, when I tell you this blush has some pigment, but it was a little intimidating at first. I looked at it and I thought it was gonna be too deep and dark, and I don't find that it was too deep or dark for my skin. This is another one, pigmented, going with a light hand, but this is a great affordable option at $10 for the drugstore. This only says a 6-month shelf life, and it says here that you have 0.17 ounces. I don't know how many grams that is. I don't see that on the website or on the back of the packaging for grams, but this one has 12 shades. So again, we have everything from corals to the pinks to a warm glowy terracotta to this one right here for the butter, which is our mauve. You have a berry shade, you have like a tangerine orange, you have an electric fuchsia, a cool toned pink, a deep rosewood. This has a wide variety of shades for you to choose from. I picked mine up at Ulta, and it says that these buttermilk blushes are supposed to have a lot of pigment. It's supposed to give you a buttery blend. It's infused with mango butter, almond butter, shea butter. This one is supposed to have 12 hours of pigmented wear, fade, and transfer proof, vegan and cruelty free. Now I found that this one did give me more of a matte finish, or like a satin matte finish. I wouldn't say that it's quite as matte as the Haus Labs, but it's definitely not like the Kosas, not like the Rare Beauty where you are getting the shimmer and shine. I did feel like it had like a nice butter texture. It applied beautifully. There is a scent, and the way that I can describe it. So like this blush almost smells like the Flintstones vitamins, if you know what I'm talking about. Do you remember those from our childhood? But the bronzer smells like the sunscreen, the Hawaiian sunscreen that has like a tropical scent. Not like a normal sunscreen, but like the Hawaiian sunscreen, if you know what I'm talking about. So these are lightly scented. Definitely something to keep in mind. I did not notice a scent with any of the others. And this one does have talc. The others were talc free. This one does have talc in the formula, so just something to note if that's something that bothers you. But again, another highly pigmented blush. It's going to give you a nice satin matte finish. This one's not going to accentuate texture like the Kosas or the Rare Beauty might, but it is going to make your skin look healthy. It's vibrant, it's colorful, and you know, NYX surprised me with this one. And don't be intimidated, okay? This looks like a deep shade, but it did apply very nicely on the skin. And just real quickly, since I have the bronzer, I did want to talk about it. I picked up the lightest shade in Buttercup, and I went back and forth. I didn't know which shade I was going to get, but I was watching Kelly Gooch, who is a shade sister with me, a shade match. She had the lightest shade, and I'm very, very pleased to say that the lightest shade looks good on me. I was afraid that it was going to be like the REM where it was too light, but this is a very pigmented bronzer, and it has a little bit of like a rosy undertone, but it's not pulling orange on my skin. I tend to kind of shy away from like the red rosy undertones, but this one has a unique rosy undertone that blends in nicely, and it doesn't leave me looking orange, so I appreciate that. Again, this is also $10. There are 8 options here. Again, you have a scent. It's also a 6-month shelf life, so very, very similar. This one, it is a matte, but I find that it's not flat matte on my skin. It's not quite as matte as like the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Matte Bronzer. This one is matte, so I like that. There's not going to be any shimmer or shine, but it doesn't leave my face looking dull. So I feel like that's important to know, especially for the dry skin girlies out there. Okay, so I talked about 5 blushes. Hopefully you found it helpful as I talked about each product and the shades and the prices and the price per ounce, but I did want to kind of like end on like a ranking note. I'm going to rank these 5 blushes, and this is just personal preference, so keep in mind I like more natural type of makeup. I like my blush to be more like of a satin finish or to give me a little bit of glow, and I have dry skin. So those are all very, very important to know. So I like them all, first of all, but if I had to put one kind of in like last place, I think that I would put the Haus Labs in French Rosé in last place, and that's just because sometimes I find it to be a little too pigmented. I can go in a little bit too much. I like the shade, but it's not my favorite shade, so that's also playing into it a little bit. In the number 4 spot, kind of for similar reasons, I would have to go with the NYX, the Buttermelt Blush, I should say, in For the Butter, just because this one is also very highly pigmented. I tried to pick a shade that I thought I would get somewhere out of, but that was a little bit different than some of the other shades in my collection. So this is a beautiful berry shade, but again, I have to be a little bit careful with these because they are super highly pigmented. Then coming in the number 3 spot, I would say is the Rare Beauty in the shade Hope, just because I do find that this is very, very shimmery on the cheeks. It almost does give you a highlighted effect without being a highlighter. Like, you're going to have a bright sheen and it's going to be all over your cheek instead of one concentrated area. But I do still like to wear this. I like to wear it on a day when I'm not going in with a highlighter. So I still am enjoying that blush. In the number 2 spot, I would have to say I'm gonna go with the Kosas. This is in the shade Swoon. Also, just because there is a little bit of like sparkle specks in here, shimmer specks in here. It does not like pull shimmery or sparkly or glittery on the cheeks, but it does give me a nice sheen. So I really, really enjoy this one. I think the shade is nice and it is super highly pigmented. But if I had to pick a favorite out of all of these, I'm gonna have to go with the Lawless. I like the way that it sits on my skin. I like that it is a matte formula, but it's kind of sitting as like a satin on my cheek. It's really allowing the highlighter to do the highlighter's job and to pop. And also just this Vintage Love shade is probably like my favorite type of shade. So I think out of the color stories, like Vintage Love just gives me what I'm looking for in a blush. And I think this Lawless blush is great quality, especially for the price. But that is going to do it for this video. I hope that you guys found it helpful. If you did enjoy this, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I am open to suggestions down below. If you want to do another, I mean, this was a blush off because, you know, like a dance off, but with blushes, trying to find which is best. But if you want me to look at bronzers or eyeshadow palettes or lipsticks or anything like that, let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe before you go. That way I can see you in the next one. Bye.